Hey, everybody. Welcome to Saturday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, a production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com. Joe Healy here to recap Friday's action around the conference, take a look at the Saturday slate in the SEC. We're going to do that all in just a second. But first, I have to let you know that this episode of Weekend Waypoints and every episode of Weekend Waypoints this season is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, your go-to destination for everything you need this baseball season. Whether you're gearing up for game day or sharpening your skills in the offseason, Academy has the bats, gloves, cleats, protective gear, training equipment, and apparel to help you bring it home for less. With everyday low prices and a huge selection of top brands like Easton, Rawlings, and Wilson, Academy makes it easy to step up to the plate with confidence. Shop in-store or online at academy.com and get ready to play ball. How about that? A little new ad read for you there. Don't worry, Fishing Fun will be back. But for now, a little bit of a different ad read. Good morning. I told you yesterday I'd be going a little bit early this morning. I gotta hit the road doing some broadcasting Liberty versus Middle Tennessee State today for ESPN Plus. So I got to drive up to Lynchburg here in a little bit. But so I'd start a little early, but happy to be doing it. Be able to still be doing it live to interact with you guys. I see Daniel, your question or your comment in there already. We'll get to it. But I hope you have your cup of coffee with you, as I do. I typically go my philosophy is no free ads, but shout out to Shipley Donuts. Those of you watching in Texas will know. Quick sip real quick. I'll be right back with you. And look, here's the deal. We already have Academy Sports and Outdoors sponsoring the show, which is one of the seminal brands of my childhood. Probably spent more time in Academy as a child than in every other store combined. That's not quite true, but you know what I mean. And so if Shipley Donuts wants to come on board and really just complete the, big brands of Joe's childhood, maybe some Whataburger in there as well, then we'd really be humming. All right, let's get to some stuff. Let's get to some SEC stuff. First off, shout out to South Carolina women's basketball going to the title game against UConn. That game should be a certified banger. I don't know if kids are still calling things bangers, but that game's going to be great. UConn beat the brakes off UCLA. Woof. So that title game should be a lot of fun. South Carolina women's basketball is a fun deal in Columbia. That has become a women's basketball town. Pretty incredible stuff. So shout out to them. As you may have noticed, Missouri, Arkansas postponed yesterday, so they will get started today. Weather will continue to be a theme this weekend, but for the most part got got everything in yesterday. So that obviously good news there. Okay, let's go to the game of the day. I see some comments rolling in. I'll get to you guys here shortly. I appreciate you getting your comments in early, and we'll chat in a minute. Let's get to the game of the day, which is Kentucky 5, Ole Miss 4 in 10 innings. It was the first game of the day in the SEC, doubleheader there in Lexington. Looked pretty dreary there, but they got the games in. Dramatic win here for Kentucky, hard-nosed win for Kentucky. The type of game they're just going to have to win, right? This is not last year where they were so veteran and so talented that they could blow teams out. They could win low-scoring games. If you made mistakes, they would punish you every single time. This team is not quite that team, but this is the type of game they're going to have to win, where it's just they have to just gut it out. They're up 4-0 early. Ole Miss storms back, ties it. The air kind of comes out of the balloon, and then they still find a way to win. Devin Burks with a walk-off little jam shot single into left field. Always cool to see Devin Burks be the guy who comes through for Kentucky, given that, he's kind of their guy, and last season was a disappointing offensive season for him in the midst of this dream season for Kentucky. So yeah, cool to see him be the guy who comes through there, and what's been a nice bounce back for him offensively this season. So good stuff there. Mason Morris for Ole Miss, by the way, in a losing effort, sure, but my goodness, he was filthy in that outing. I've seen him a few times this season, and he's, the stuff is always really good, but yesterday was the best I've seen him. It was really good. So Ole Miss knows it has something with him, but man, really hammered it home yesterday. Speaking of relievers, James McCoy pitched well for Kentucky, and it seems like they may have found something with James McCoy as a reliever instead of an outfielder. We've been waiting on this breakout for James McCoy from an offensive standpoint, but maybe he's better on the mound. So we'll see. Another couple of good important innings for him in this one to get the win. All right, let's close this out. We will go to some comments, then we'll get to hitter and pitcher of the day and roll on with the show here. First comment in was Daniel Ordoin, who says, good morning, Joe. Good morning, Daniel. Big time game last night. Massive performance on all fronts from the Tigers. 3 bombs with the wind blowing in. Tigers seem to be peaking at the right time. Yeah, he's speaking of the LSU Tigers. Big win there, 10-2 over Oklahoma. Exactly what the doctor ordered. You win a road series. Now you can get greedy, look for a sweep. That's kind of what you're. I mean, that's a dream scenario. Is sweeping on the road, because the math really falls in your favor. You know, Mark and I on Highway to Hoover talk about the math all the time, right? Where, you know, you need to get to, if you're on the bubble, like 13 is the magic number where you start to get considered. 16, really, maybe 15, but more like 16 is when you're talking about hosting. You know, you start to get up to 18, 19, 20. Now you're, you know, kind of comfortable national seed. So, you know, you never expect to sweep a road series, especially against a good team. And I think Oklahoma's a good team, like a flawed team. I think we've seen some of the flaws, but a good team. And so to go on the road and have a chance to sweep is huge for LSU. So we'll talk about some of the individual performances here shortly, but yeah, really, really complete game for LSU. Never really let Oklahoma have hope in that one. It felt pretty early on that we knew how that one was going. Kobe Walker throws in a "Let's go Vols." My goodness, what a what a pitching performance yesterday. I don't care how like down and out A&M's offense is, but anytime you're shoving like that, like it's impressive stuff. So, you know, what else can we say about Tennessee at this point, man? Like Mike Rooney said it on the D1 baseball podcast the other day of like, we probably don't talk about the Vols enough, but it's like, what is left to say, you know? And that's not fair to them, but man, like it's just this like consistent excellence, right? Like game after game. Doesn't mean they can't lose games, I mean, you know, or what have you. Like that's going to happen, but right now they're not. They are not losing any games right now. Michael Wilkins says, how about Chris Stanfield? A couple errors are the only drawback. I mean, yeah, he's been such an X factor, man. Like he's on my list of hitter of the day candidates that we'll talk about here in a minute. Didn't know what you were going to get from him, right? Coming into the season, it had been a mixed bag at Auburn. He didn't have the sophomore year he would have wanted at Auburn. And so kind of came to LSU is a little bit of a mystery, at least for me, a little bit of a mystery, man, of what are you going to get here? Like at a bare minimum, he's a good athlete with SEC experience. He can play center field. So, you know, you knew you were going to have a nice role player, but he's turned into someone who's a big part of that lineup, or at least has been this weekend. So you go through an entire SEC season, even hitters as good as Jared Jones and Derek Curiel are going to have bad games or slumps or what have you. And so being able to have a bunch of guys who can just pick up slack is so huge. And I think we're seeing that with Chris Stanfield, how important he can be. Nicholas Doherty says, morning, Joe. LSU keeps proving they're in that top tier of the SEC, and Oklahoma just somewhere in the middle. Yeah, I think that's fair. Like Oklahoma still feels like a regional team to me. They do a lot of things well. I think they're still kind of in that middle of the pack. But yeah, LSU, I mean, look, it's easy to be enamored, obviously, with Tennessee, but you know, Arkansas has been playing so well. We've kind of started to turn our attention that way, right? And like Georgia's had its issues on the mound, but the offense is so explosive at times. We'll talk about what happened last night. It was not explosive. But typically their offense is so explosive, it's easy to like look at the shiny thing over here of Georgia's lineup, right? When really, yeah, LSU, I mean, they had the one weekend, right? And where they had a losing weekend, and I don't want to say anybody wrote them off. That's not true at all. But just like when that happens, your attention turns elsewhere. And so now we're coming back around to, oh, right, LSU is among like this upper tier of the league. And it just so happened, you know, there are a few other teams there. It's the SEC. You're always going to have multiple national title contenders in the league, but LSU is definitely in there for sure. Yeah, it's a good point. Vis-a-vis 16 this morning, Joe. Good morning. Rain here in Northwest Arkansas. Yeah, I'd gotten a little tip it was Matt Jones, who we had on the podcast a couple weekends ago. He texted me this before the weekend and was like, yeah, it's gonna be real challenging to get games in this weekend. So I hope they do. For both teams, because also you just don't want a weekend of sitting around. That's not good for either team. You know, and you don't want to lose games of it. Like not lose games like lose the game in the score. I mean, like have games get canceled, right? And just you can't make them up. Like nobody wants that. James Charles says, good morning, Joe. What a terrific performance from LSU with only one series lost. We're fifth in the standings. Yeah, that's a good point. It just shows how tough the SEC is. Yeah, exactly. Like you lost one series and it's a reasonable series to lose, right? Like nobody's looking at that like, oh no, they've been exposed. But yeah, you're fifth in the standings. Like that. And the good news is like other teams up in the standings will lose series. Like nobody is going through the rest of the SEC schedule without losing a series. I mean, maybe. I mean, if they don't, then whoever doesn't lose a series in the SEC this year is probably going to win the league. So maybe that happens, but I'm not betting on it. I think just about everybody will have a weekend where they just are flat and they lose a series because of it. I'm now in the race against my coffee getting cold. You guys are, I'm sure, familiar with that. A lot of LSU love in here. Love to see it. Like, obviously, LSU fans love their team, and I love having them around Weekend Waypoints. How about them Tigers? 3 pitchers, 18 innings, no earned runs. Oh, I didn't realize there were no unearned runs. Good call there, Garrett. Leadoff hitter reached safely almost every inning last night. Yeah, I mean, that's how you draw it up, right? Like, you're giving nothing to the opposition. You're always on base. That makes for stressful innings for the opposing pitchers. Yeah, that's how you draw it up. Caleb Falk, morning, Joe. Plenty of LSU comments already, but I'm happy with the way we played. Pitching has been great so far. Bats continue to come through. Yeah, that's that's the recipe. Joey says, I look forward to these every weekend, Joe. Thanks for taking the time. Thank you, Joey, and thanks for the wave last weekend in Columbia. I was out on the field waiting to talk to Tony Vitello after I believe it was Saturday's win. And Joey was up in the stands and yelled down at me and Jack DeLongshaw because I was there with Jack. And yeah, so it was good to wave at you, Joey. Sorry that I was down the field and couldn't come over and shake your hand and say hello, but I appreciate you waving and saying hello there. All right. Sam Smith, after seeing A&M in person pregame and during the game in person, that team looks like they hate each other, no energy, and looked like they were going through the motions. I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously we don't know exactly, right? Like, but I would say when you're getting your brains beat in every weekend, like you probably do hate each other because you're sick of, you're sick of losing. You're sick of all the time spent traveling to games to lose in SEC play. You're probably starting to wonder why this is happening, right? Because this team is too talented to be 1-10 or 1-9. Like, even though they're not as good as we thought they would be, they should still be better than 1-9. Like that part's unfathomable to me. And so, yeah, I think you might be right. And if you are right, I kind of get it. Like, I think you start to hate people around you when you're like, you just keep showing up and keep getting your brains beat in. It's tough. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely, there's the physical component, but I also think it's a mental thing at this point. And how could it not be? And then you make a good point, Sam. No idea how A&M shows up to play 18 today. Yeah, doubleheader today. So you got to get your mind right quick, A&M, if you're going to not just get totally run off the field. We'll see. Joey says, if Grovac wants to transfer to Knoxville next year, I would welcome him. I'm sure you would, Joey. And roughly 15 other, well, I guess you can't include A&M in this, 14 other SEC programs would also be very happy to welcome in Gavin Grovac. Josh Woolley says, hope the Hogs can get some games in, plan for a game today and 7-inning doubleheader tomorrow, but not sure if they can get all that in. Yeah, it's just tough when you have these weekends where you just can't find windows. Because that's the thing. Like, coaches are always looking for, when they're looking at the radars, they're not just trying to look for windows where you can start the game typically. And I can't speak to this situation because I've not talked to DVH or Carrick Jackson about it, but typically they're not just looking for like, here's a window where we can start. Sometimes it ends up coming to that, and it might come to that this weekend in Fayetteville. Typically they're looking for windows where we can get the entire game in. That's obviously harder. So, but again, maybe their back's against the wall enough this weekend in terms of getting games in. They just have to take what they can get. That might just be the reality. Kobe Walker asks, what do you put in your coffee? I'm a pretty bland guy. It's black coffee. I don't like, the flavored coffees and things of that nature. It's black coffee, but I'll do a splash of creamer and I'll play around a little bit with it's gotta be non-dairy creamer. Your boy's lactose intolerant. But I'll do a splash of non-dairy cream and I'll play around with the flavor there. Like I'll do a vanilla or a brown sugar or caramel or whatever. I'm not too terribly picky as long as it's hot. I drink hot coffee in the summer. I know that's not when I'm outside, but at home, if I wake up, I'll drink hot coffee. I know that's kind of a hot, no pun intended, hot take. I'm not a nice coffee guy. Just never really got on that. 3971 ATX Horns on X. Talk about Longhorn baseball last night. Pitching was incredible. Yeah, man, Jared Spencer, that dude was pretty much untouchable against a lineup that is not used to being stifled like that. Incredible pitching performance for Spencer and the Longhorns. We'll see if they can repeat that, but that's what I talk about when I previewed that series. I talked about, on paper, Georgia's got the better lineup. Georgia's healthier. Texas is dealing with the injuries. Georgia's pitching staff has more raw talent, and like in terms of prospects, like Georgia's pitching staff has more talent. And yet, if Texas wins the series, like nobody's gonna be surprised. They just find ways, and that's Jim Schlossnagle, man. Like the dude just wins. He knows how to put the pieces together. Max Wiener's a great pitching coach. They just find ways, and so they're always kind. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of A&M in Schlossnagle's first year there. I've said that before, where you weren't sure how the pieces were going to fit together. It was a bunch of portal guys, and then they end up in Omaha. And we'll see where Texas ends up. But if they end up in Omaha, will any of us be surprised? No, I don't think so. This is just kind of what they do. But that was incredible last night. I never expect anybody to totally shut down Georgia, and they did 3 hits all game for Georgia. That's incredible. Yeah, definitely a hat tip to Texas. We'll talk a little more about that here in just a minute. All right, a few more comments here, then we'll get to hitter and pitcher of the day, but I love the comments. Tennyson Tipton, hey, Joe, talk me off the ledge. I no longer have the expectations I did, obviously, but is it time to start having new direction conversations? Most talented roster early may have. I think it's fair to start having those conversations. I will leave that to the A&M brass because that is a difficult decision to make. If you're going to make a change after 1 year, you better be doggone sure you've got something you think is better lined up. Because it starts to become a self-fulfilling thing a little bit where, you move on from a guy after a year and even if it's justified, right? Like, because we're not in the locker room, we're not in the team meetings, so we don't know some of the inner workings of the program either and how that's going. We just see the on-field product, which is not good. So if you're going to move on, you better be really sure, because if not, it becomes a situation where, okay, you bring someone else in and they understand because of what we saw with Michael early in year one, they understand that it's a pressure cooker and one bad year can be enough to change your life, to put it mildly. And so it kind of creates that pressure. Look, you could argue pressure is good, and I would agree to some level, but how much is too much, right? Where it's like you have to immediately be one of the best teams in the country to be at the top of the SEC, and that's a lot of pressure. And so again, that's the job, right? I get it, but so I say all that to say, we'll see. I don't have a feel for it, to be honest with you. I don't say this to push it off, but obviously Kendall's just much more plugged in on this in general, but also particularly at A&M. So I really don't know what they're going to do. And I don't know that they know what they're going to do, to be honest, because nobody could have seen this coming, right? It wasn't just us that had A&M ranked number 1. It was every publication in the country. And most people I talked to were like, yeah, they're the best team. And, I talked to a bunch of coaches at ABCA, the coaching convention in January, and they were like, yeah, that's the best team. That's the best roster. So, I think this has caught everyone flat-footed. And I don't think the A&M brass is probably any different in terms of it catching them flat-footed. So we'll see. But it has created a little bit of intrigue where I did not expect there to be intrigue, to be honest with you. Jeremy Scott says, roll Tide, tough night for them. Indeed. We have an Auburn comment in here in a minute we'll discuss, but the Braves did win, and yeah, it's not been easy for the Braves so far this season. So yeah, good for the Braves there. Glenn Barros says, if Gavin Guidry can return and be in good form, LSU bullpen issues will be nearly solved. Yeah, he's certainly going to help. And the bullpen issues, I think I talked about them a little bit last weekend, but that's such a minor because like they do have really good bullpen guys. Case and Evans pitched great last night out of the bullpen. Zach Cowan's obviously been awesome, on and on. So it is like if you're gonna nitpick that team, that's maybe what you're looking at. But yeah, getting Guidry back, regardless of how you feel about the current bullpen, is certainly going to be very helpful. I think the idea is maybe next weekend on Gavin Guidry, I think is what I read. That obviously will be great for the Tigers. Todd Harris, my Cats need some hitting today. Agreed. They pitched it well both games of the DH, but one run the second game is not going to get it done. Slim Reaper going to shove today. Go Cats. Yeah, Ben Cleaver on the mound today for Kentucky. And, if you're Kentucky, you feel pretty confident about that. He's been your best starting pitcher this season. You're right, Todd. Like you just got to get the offense going. I think from an offensive perspective, yesterday's performance in game 2 is disappointing just because Riley Maddox is hittable. He's a good pitcher. He battles. He's experienced in the SEC. Like he's not going to get overwhelmed out there on the mound, but he's a guy who tends to get hit. And so to not really have much of anything for him in the second game of that doubleheader yesterday was kind of disappointing from a Kentucky standpoint. But you have Cleaver on the mound today. He's your best guy. You have to feel pretty confident about him giving you a chance to win. You just gotta find something against Mason Nichols in the Ole Miss bullpen. Randy Peterson says War Eagle Auburn Athletics getting hot at the right time. Easy for me to say. Big one on the diamond. 10-0 over Alabama. Obviously, that went over your rival. You'll take that every day and twice on Sunday. And then Auburn men's basketball today in the Final Four, along with Florida men's basketball, a little SEC matchup in the Final Four. Yeah, good luck to both those teams as well. Looking forward to watching that this evening. Ryan Turdy says, Texas limiting UGA to 3 hits is extremely impressive. Their staff should be able to keep them in every game. Sorry if you said that already, Joe. I'm 15 minutes behind. No worries, Ryan. I think that's exactly right. Like they just kind of have to wait out some of these injuries. Because most, other than Ballou, everybody's expected back. That's good. So at some point they'll be healthier even than they are right now, at least theoretically. And if Spencer's going to pitch like this, like if they can do that to Georgia, they can do that to any team in the country, even Tennessee, even LSU, even, and they won a series against LSU. But my point being, if they're going to pitch like that, they can beat anybody. And so the sky really is the limit there. And I've kind of thought of Texas as maybe like a tier below the Arkansas, LSU, Tennessee, etc., Georgia. But certainly if they win this series against Georgia, like that's another notch there. And maybe we're underselling them a little bit. It just felt like maybe they're just a little short, not literally, but just like, maybe they needed a couple more depth pieces on the mound. It'd be nice if they, especially now that Ballou's out, if they had like one more big bopper in the middle of the order. But maybe not. Maybe they're, excuse me, frog in my throat this morning. Maybe not. Maybe they're national title contender as they are. They've won the series against LSU. They're one game away from winning the series against Georgia. And at some point, we just have to acknowledge that, okay, like they may not be as sexy on the roster as some other teams here, but maybe they're just as good. And that's a credit to that team and that coaching staff and all that. So impressive stuff there by the Longhorns for sure. Let's talk hitter of the day. I'm going to share my screen out here. Bear with me. My super high-tech hitter of the day sheet. All right. Chase Fralick, hitter of the day for Auburn. A lot of good candidates, though. Like, Chris Stanfield, frankly, could have been the hitter of the day. We talked about him earlier. Riley Nelson from Vanderbilt, a really good day. Bo Hollins, 4 for 5 for South Carolina. But Chase Fralick, 4 for 4 with 2 doubles. He's been such a revelation for them. Among the freshmen, like he was not talked about, at least in my conversations with folks around the SEC, he was not talked about as much as some others in that class. And yet he's been the guy who's been the most consistent at the plate as the season has gone on. Now, I do think there are some it's a freshman wall. Like I think that'll happen. That happens to everybody, but he's been really, really consistent so far. And again, 10-0 win last night over rival Alabama. Other candidates, Luke Hill for Ole Miss in game 1 of that doubleheader, 3 for 5. Austin Foley in game 1 of the doubleheader against Kentucky, 3 for 5 with a double. Former Kentucky catcher, Austin Foley, so that had to feel good, even if things ended on okay terms there. A little like Cam Kojal against Vanderbilt. Even regardless of how it ended, it's just all you want to perform well against a team you used to play for. Like that's just a pride thing. So Austin Foley goes 3 for 5. That had to feel pretty good. Devin Burks in game 1 of that doubleheader, 2 for 4 with a walk, including that walk-off hit. Riley Nelson, a 6-0 win for Vanderbilt over Florida, a Florida team that not too unlike A&M for different reasons, but just kind of looks a little lost. And how could you not be? They're also now 1-9 in the league. They're extremely injured. It just hasn't gone according to plan there at all. Liam Peterson pitched okay, but not good enough. And then Vanderbilt's pitching was excellent. We'll talk about that when we talk about pitcher of the day candidates, but big win there for Vanderbilt. Bo Hollins for South Carolina, 4 for 5 with a homer and 4 RBIs. Big win for South Carolina over Mississippi State. Talked about the importance of that series. If either of these teams want to even entertain the idea of being postseason teams, they could not lose this series. Now Mississippi State is frankly right up against it. Mississippi State really kind of needs to win these next 2 games to be serious, especially with the games being at home. I mean, that's you lose a Pico Con start to South Carolina offense that has not really been very good. That's a tough pill to swallow. But I highlight Bo Hollins in part because, he went 4 for 5, but there are some good young pieces in that South Carolina lineup that I like him and KJ Scobie in particular. 2 really nice hitters. I think look, next year you're going to lose Ethan Petrie. That's going to leave a big hole in the South Carolina lineup. But those 2 guys, I think, are future centerpieces. They're kind of centerpieces now, but you know what I mean? They're the next guys up for South Carolina in a big game again for Bo Hollins. Eric Snow for Auburn, 3 for 4 with a double and a walk. A couple of Tennessee guys here. Andrew Fisher, 2 for 4, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs. He's really the guy that got the ball rolling in that game for Tennessee offensively. And then Dean Curley had a leadoff spot, 2 for 3 with a homer and a walk. In game 2, the doubleheader, Campbell Smithwick for Ole Miss, just 1 for 1, but it was a pinch hit go-ahead home run in the top of the 9th to break a 1-1 tie and give Ole Miss the 3-1 win. Big 2, just because, look, that's a guy who, in Campbell Smithwick, big-time recruit, didn't go well as a freshman, hasn't gone well as a sophomore at the plate. So good on him to have that moment. I don't know what it means or if it means anything. Maybe he just, saw the ball well on that pitch and drove it out of the park, right? But maybe it is the start of a little something. They did love to have him. He's so talented that, if you can, having one more option like that is always a good thing. So I think there's still hope that he could break out, and maybe that's the impetus for it. But certainly he's going to, if he swings it better, he's going to be extremely helpful for that lineup. We talked about Chris Stanfield with a 4 for 5. Jared Jones, 3 for 6, another big game there. And then I put Nolan McCarthy on here, 2 for 4 with a homer, because he had 2 of Georgia's 3 hits. So he was kind of the one Georgia Bulldog that, was at least seeing the ball okay yesterday. So kudos to him. All right, I see comments in there. I'm going to flip over to pitcher real quick, and then I promise we'll come back and wrap the show with a couple more of your comments here. So let's talk pitchers. Pitcher of the day is Jared Spencer. We talked about it. 7 2/3 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 run, 4 walks, and 11 strikeouts. Just absolutely stifled the Georgia offense. Incredible stuff. Easy. Well, I don't want to say easy choice here because Liam Doyle threw 6 no-hit innings, but just the quality of the Georgia lineup, the context of that for Texas, that's why he gets the nod. But a lot of good choices here. Mason Morris in game 1 of that doubleheader in relief. I talked about how good he was. Just 1 unearned run in 4 1/3 innings. Nate Harris for Kentucky started game 1, only went 3 2/3 because he's not stretched out, but I liked what I saw. That he strikes me as a guy that maybe you try that again next weekend and stretch him out a little bit more. That's how good it looked for me. I'd be intrigued if I were Kentucky about him as a rotation candidate moving forward. The Vanderbilt trio of J.D. Thompson, Miller Green, and Sawyer Hawks in their 9 innings, 7 hits, no runs, 3 walks, 9 strikeouts to shut out Florida. Brennan Sweeney closing out that win for South Carolina over Mississippi State. 3 no-hit innings with 4 strikeouts. Big-time stuff there. Sam Dutton with a complete game shutout. 7-inning complete game shutout because that was that 10-0 win. Run rule, 2 hits, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. Liam Doyle, 6 no-hit innings, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. Riley Maddox in game 2, talked about him earlier. 5 innings pitched with just the 1 unearned run allowed against the Wildcats. Will McCausland closing out that game 2 with 3 hitless innings. Big time stuff there. the LSU duo of Anthony Ianson and Kason Evans, in their 9 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, both unearned, 4 walks and 13 strikeouts in that win over Oklahoma. And then Eric Hammond, a bright spot in that game for Georgia and what was otherwise a tough one, 3 1/3 hitless innings to at least kind of keep them in that game a little bit. It never really felt too much in jeopardy there late in the game for Texas, but he was able to at least keep the Longhorns at bay enough to at least give Georgia the thought that they might be able to come back in that one. All right. Let's go over to the comments here. We'll get through them pretty quick here. Chris Hardy says Lamonis has to go. That is a common opinion, I guess I would say. Like, I was struggling to find my words there. I'm not really sure why. Let's blame it on me recording earlier than I normally do. But yeah, that is an opinion shared by many, is what I should say. And that's the reality of the Mississippi State job. You make regionals last year, but the expectation is regionals every year, whether that's fair or not. And so, that is what it is. We knew that if they weren't good this year, if things went sideways on them, there were going to be a lot of questions asked. Joey Lobster says Ole Miss bounced back today. Well, they did win the second game of that doubleheader, but yeah, I mean, a series win would be huge for Ole Miss to get a road series win. Equally big for Kentucky, right? I talked about it in the preview of this weekend, that these are two teams that are kind of occupying a similar space, both in the standings and kind of just in if you made me do a power ranking, two teams in a similar spot. So this feels like it could be the classic coin flip series. Walter Gothrow says, LSU touched up Spencer. Yeah, he's not been perfect this year. Like, the stuff is electric, but yeah, I mean, there are games where, he gets got, but yesterday he was just totally on his game. Garrett Douglas says no Josh Pearson on the hitter list, 2 home runs last night. Must have missed him, Garrett, my bad. Certainly, yeah, 2 home runs for Josh Pearson. That'll make the list just about every time. So yeah, my bet on that to Josh Pearson, but yet another guy in the LSU lineup. A lot of dangerous guys in that lineup. Sam Murphy says South Carolina's offense is hitting over 300 in SEC play. They just can't get the big knocks when they need it for the most part. Pitching has also been shaky. Think bats will allow them to stay competitive. Yeah, and I think if that's the dynamic, then I feel decent, because I actually do kind of like some of South Carolina's talent on the mound. It just hasn't performed as well as I thought. Yeah, so I'm with you. So like, hitting better than 300 SEC play, it's a good point to make, because to hear me talk about it, it's like, they're hitting 240 in SEC play, but yeah, they're actually, from an average standpoint, swinging the bat pretty well in SEC play. But you're right that it doesn't seem like the big hits are there. And I think part of that is just because it is a little bit of a station to station offensive approach. Like, I was there in Columbia, and granted they're facing Tennessee, and there were a couple big swings. Petrie hit a home run in game 1 and what have you, but and Jace Woida had a home run in that series. But for the most part, it was kind of having to string 4 or 5 hits together to score runs, and that's just tough. So you could be hitting 300, but if you're not getting balls in the gap with the bases loaded, it's going to be it's hard to manufacture runs like that. So I think it's a good point, Sam. And also, I think you're right about the clutch hits part, because it's 300, but it feels a little empty just because they're not scoring at the clip you would think based on that average. And you bring up a good point here. Also a crazy stretch with 3 straight top 10 series. Yeah. Hopefully they can get some wins with a lighter schedule. I mean, yeah, that's exactly that's the hope there if you're a South Carolina fan. Joey comes back and says, can you touch on Joey Vellini today for FSU, or is it illegal? Yeah, they'll throw me in prison, Joey, if I talk about ACC baseball in here. But no, he's been awesome, man. Like, I saw him at South Florida 2 falls ago and was like, what's why is this guy not lighting it up? This stuff is excellent. And it just took getting in the right, getting to Florida State and just hearing different coaches. And sometimes that's all it takes, just some different voices. But yeah, he's been awesome. For D1baseball.com, our national pitcher of the year at mid-season, Joey Vellini. So good stuff there. And then you ask, and this, I'll end on this. Do you think Florida Gators are going to snap out of it? I'm starting to just think no, Joey. Like, it's not even that they're not capable of it. It's just they have injuries, and they have guys that just haven't taken the steps forward. And that combination's tough. And we're enough into it now that Could they play better baseball? Sure. And I kind of expect that, but I just don't know that they're ever going to like totally snap out of it and get back to being something like the Florida we expect. I just don't know that that's in there anymore. If it was, maybe they're going to be a little like A&M, where they were always going to be a little disappointing, but now the injuries have exacerbated it. We'll never know, obviously, but I just don't think so, Joey, to be honest. I think they'll probably play better at points, but I'm not sure they have that ceiling in them anymore, just because of everything that they've had to deal with this year. Okay, quickly, Saturday game of the day. Georgia at Texas. Brian Curley on the mound against Luke Harrison. My big question here is, was the way Texas handled the Georgia offense a one-off with Spencer on the mound? Or do they just have a really good game plan maybe for this lineup? And can Luke Harrison execute that plan? That'll be fascinating to watch. Texas only had to use one reliever. Now, it was Dylan Volantis, one of their better guys, but they're also well rested in the bullpen because of what Jared Spencer did. So they're in good shape from that standpoint. I'll be fascinated to see if that was kind of if that was a one-off, or there's something repeatable there. Sorry, stumbled on my words there. Okay, Joey, last one. I got you. Will Mississippi State win today? I'm going to go yes against South Carolina. Why not? They are facing Jarvis Evans, who is a tricky lefty. You're going to have to be able to hit a changeup. If you're going to hit off Jarvis Evans, he does not throw hard. But he is tricky and he is crafty, and he did an excellent job against Tennessee last weekend. So it also wouldn't shock me if it goes the other way. But if you're making me pick, I'll say, yeah, Mississippi State gets this one to even that series. All right, folks, enjoy the Saturday of baseball. I will be back again tomorrow morning, wrapping up Saturday's action, looking ahead to Sunday in the conference. Have a good day, everybody. I'll talk to you then.